He stole my $3,000 bike and tried to flip it for $800. So I took it back on a test ride and he called the cops on himself. I was standing in a grocery store parking lot on a Monday morning, one hand on the handlebar of my own stolen bike, looking at the man who had taken it off my balcony 72 hours earlier, and I said the 7 words I had been rehearsing since Sunday afternoon. "Can I take it for a quick ride?" He said yes. He should not have said yes. "My name is Chase. I'm 26. I work in graphic design. I live in a second-floor apartment with a balcony that I have always considered one of the better features of the place, good light in the morning, enough space for a chair and a small table, and until last Friday, a secure spot where I stored my bike under a weatherproof cover with a cable lock threaded through the frame and around the railing. The bike was, then is again, now, a custom electric mountain bike that I built up over about 18 months. I started with a quality mid-drive frame and added components piece by piece as my budget allowed, a torque-sensing motor system, a 48-volt battery with a range that would embarrass most entry-level e-bikes, hydraulic disc brakes, a dropper post, tires I had researched for longer than I care to admit. The total build cost, documented across about a dozen receipts that I keep in a folder because I am the kind of person who keeps receipts, was just over $3,000. It is not a subtle bike. It is matte black with a specific orange cable detail that I ran myself, a custom stem cap, and a battery pack with a hairline scratch on the left side from the one time I dropped it in my first month of ownership. If you know what you're looking at, it is immediately recognizable as a custom build. If you don't know what you're looking at, it is a very nice looking bike that someone might reasonably think they could flip quickly. I know this because someone did exactly that. Friday night, I came home from a friend's place around 11, went to bed, and woke up Saturday morning to go for an early ride. I stepped onto the balcony. The cover was gone. The cable lock was on the ground, cut, not picked, the clean diagonal shear of bolt cutters. The bike was gone. I stood on my balcony in the early morning in my socks and I looked at the cut lock on the ground and I felt something move through me that started hot and then went very cold very fast, the specific cold of a person who has just understood that something they built carefully and loved genuinely has been taken by someone who saw it only as a number. I filed a police report. I am not naive about what police reports for stolen bikes accomplish. They create a record, they are occasionally useful for insurance, and they are largely the end of the official investigative interest in the matter. The officer who took my report was professional and honest about the odds. The serial number was logged. My receipt copies were noted. He told me to check Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. He was not wrong. I checked Saturday. Nothing. I checked Sunday morning with the specific focused attention of someone who has already decided they are going to find something. I searched by category, by price range, by location radius. I was methodical. I went through electric bikes, mountain bikes, and just bikes to catch sellers who didn't know what they had. And there it was. Sunday afternoon. Listed 4 hours earlier. Electric mountain bike, barely used, great condition, $800 OBO. 4 photos. Slightly different angles than I would have chosen, taken in what looked like a garage or storage unit with fluorescent lighting. My bike. My exact bike. The orange cable detail. The custom stem cap. The scratch on the battery pack. I stared at the listing for a while. My hands were very still on the keyboard, which is the opposite of what you might expect, but when I am very angry, I go still rather than animated, the way certain animals do before they move. The seller's profile was thin. Created recently. No mutual friends, no history, a profile photo that looked pulled from somewhere else. A name that was common enough to be either real or generic. He had responded to a question from another user in the comments, still available? Yes, come get it, with the specific terseness of someone who wants to move a thing quickly. He wanted to move it quickly because he knew what it was. I thought about my options. The police report existed, but the bike's recovery was not going to be prioritized. Showing up and confronting him directly was a path toward a situation I couldn't control. Sending a cease and desist from a lawyer was expensive and slow and would likely result in the listing disappearing and the bike moving through another channel. I needed him to bring the bike to me. I opened a new browser tab. I created a new Facebook account. The name I used was Emma, a common name, nothing memorable. The profile photo I used was of a cartoon dog, because I couldn't use a real person's photo and I didn't want to use a stock image that might be reverse searched. I filled in enough of the profile to make it look like someone who had joined Facebook recently and didn't use it much, which is accurate for a significant portion of Facebook's actual user base. Then I messaged the listing. Hi, is this still available? I've been looking for an e-bike for a while and this looks perfect. Would you take $800 cash? I can meet tomorrow. I hit send and I went to make dinner, because I was not going to sit and watch the notification. He responded in 40 minutes. Yeah, still have it. $800 cash works. Where are you? I gave him a general area vague enough to be plausible, specific enough to allow for a meeting spot suggestion. He proposed a grocery store parking lot about 10 minutes from my apartment. Public, open, well lit even at night, the preferred meeting spot of people who are selling things they shouldn't have, because it feels safe. safe. Visibility works both ways. We agreed on Monday at 10 a.m. I put my phone down and I sat with the plan for a while, turning it over, looking for the places where it could go wrong. The main variable was recognition, whether he had seen me, whether he knew what I looked like. I live in an apartment building. My balcony faces a rear alley. The theft, based on the method and the timing, was almost certainly opportunistic, someone who spotted the cupboard shape and decided to investigate, cut the lock, and left. Not someone who had been watching me specifically, not someone who knew me. I was reasonably confident he didn't know my face. Reasonably confident is not the same as certain, but it was enough to move on. I also pulled up my Ring camera app. I had a camera mounted inside my sliding door, facing the balcony, that I'd installed 6 months ago after a neighbor had a package stolen. Friday night, 2:17 a.m., the balcony footage showed a figure in dark clothing and a hood climbing over the railing from below. He'd gone up the exterior of the building from the ground, cutting the lock with bolt cutters, lifting the cover, and walking the bike back over the railing and down. Clear enough to see the bolt cutters. Clear enough to see the bike. Not clear enough to make a definitive identification from the face, but clear enough to establish the theft occurred, establish the time, and establish that the bike was taken from my balcony by a person who broke in to take it. I downloaded the footage. I saved it in 3 places. I texted my friend Marcus that night. Marcus is a paralegal and the kind of friend you keep around specifically for moments like this, and described what I was planning. He listened and said, "You're not committing theft if you're reclaiming your own property. The bike is yours, you have the receipt and serial number, and you're taking it from the person who stole it. The legal risk is low. The bigger risk is physical confrontation. I'm meeting him in a public parking lot in daylight," I said. "Then the risk is low," Marcus said. "Don't take the cash out. Don't negotiate. Don't engage. Get on and go. Get on and go," I repeated. "And chase," he said. "Don't look back." I slept well that night, better than I expected. The particular piece of someone who has a plan they believe in. Monday morning, I dressed practically jeans, a gray hoodie, a baseball cap. Nothing that would stand out or be memorable. I drove to the grocery store and parked at the far end of the lot, away from the main entrance. I sat in my car and watched the lot for 10 minutes before 10 a.m., getting the geography of it, where the entrances were, which direction was open, where I would go if I got on the bike and needed to move. At 10:02, a car pulled into the lot. A mid-size sedan, parked closer to the entrance. The driver's door opened. He was maybe 22, 23. Stocky build, dark jacket, the slightly too casual posture of someone trying hard to look relaxed. He lifted the bike out of his trunk, my bike, the orange cable catching the morning light exactly the way it always had, and leaned it against the side of his car. He looked at his phone. He was waiting for Emma. I got out of my car. I walked across the parking lot toward him. He watched me approaching with the neutral assessment of someone who doesn't yet know what to make of the situation. I wasn't a young woman, which was what he was expecting, but I wasn't anything alarming either. Just a guy in a gray hoodie walking toward a bike listing. "You the seller?" I said. He hesitated. "Just for a second." "Yeah, you know Emma?" "She asked me to come check it out," I said, which was technically accurate in the sense that Emma and I share a brain. "She's not good with bikes. Wanted someone to look at it first." He relaxed. The explanation was plausible and he was motivated to believe it. He wanted to sell the bike and I was a buyer-adjacent presence. "It's a good bike," he said, already moving into the pitch. "Electric, good range, barely used." I looked at my bike. I looked at the orange cable detail. I looked at the scratch on the battery pack. I felt the heat build in the back of my throat and compress itself down into something flat and functional, because this was not the moment. I crouched and looked at the motor. I straightened and checked the bars. I did the things a person does when they are evaluating a bike they haven't seen before, and I did them carefully, because I needed him comfortable. I needed him to feel like this was a normal transaction proceeding normally. "Rides well?" I said. "Smooth," he said. I nodded. I looked at the parking lot, open, flat, maybe 40 meters of clear asphalt to the far entrance. I looked at him. "Can I take it for a quick test ride?" I said. "Just across the lot. Before I hand over the cash. Here is where I need to stop, because what happened in the next 30 seconds was simple. And what happened in the 30 minutes after that is the part that still makes me shake my head when I think about it." He said yes. I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe he figured a test ride across a parking lot was contained enough to be safe. Maybe he was confident I'd come back because the buyer was a girl who'd sent a friend. Maybe he just didn't think it through, because people who steal things and sell them on Facebook Marketplace are often not strategic thinkers. He said yes, and I put my hands on my handlebars, the ones I had set to exactly the rise and angle I preferred, and I swung my leg over my saddle, and I felt the familiar geometry of the bike settle under me the way your own bike does, different from any other bike, the specific fit of something built for your body. I pedaled forward, slow at first, normal test ride pace. I went about 10 meters and I felt him watching from behind me, arms crossed, waiting. Then I engaged the motor assist. My bike has a torque-sensing motor that responds to pedal pressure. The harder you push, the more assist you get, with a kind of seamless acceleration that is, frankly, one of my favorite things about it. I pushed. The bike moved. I did not stop at the far side of the parking lot. I went through the entrance, turned right onto the sidewalk, and kept going. I did not look back. I heard him behind me shout, wordless at first, then, "Hey, hey," getting smaller as I moved, and he didn't. I turned the corner at the end of the block. Then I was on the bike path that runs behind the commercial strip, which I knew because I had ridden it approximately 100 times, and I settled into the pace of someone riding home on a Monday morning because that is exactly what I was doing. It took me 11 minutes to get home. I brought the bike inside, not back to the balcony, into the living room, where I leaned it against the wall and stood with my hands on the top tube and looked at it for a moment. Then I put the kettle on. I had earned tea. I had been home for about 25 minutes when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. No message. It rang again. I answered. "You took my bike." His voice was tight and high, the specific register of someone managing fury they haven't fully processed yet. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said pleasantly. "In the parking lot. The test ride." "I think you have the wrong number," I said. I ended the call. 20 minutes after that, there was a knock at my door. 2 police officers. One I recognized vaguely from the precinct when I'd filed my report, a coincidence that I would appreciate more later. The other was younger, with the specific expression of someone who has been sent to follow up on a call and isn't entirely sure what they're walking into. "Are you Chase?" the first officer said. "I am," I said. "We received a report of a stolen bicycle," he said. "The complainant says he was selling a bike in the Riverside grocery parking lot this morning and the buyer took it on a test ride and didn't come back." I looked at him. I took a breath, not of nerves, of the specific pleasure of a sequence arriving at exactly the moment you prepared it for. "Come in," I said. I've been expecting something like this. I had everything on the kitchen table. I had laid it out before the kettle had finished boiling, because I knew I had known since Sunday night that there was a meaningful chance the thief, with the spectacular audacity of the truly brazen, might call the police. People who steal things sometimes have an overdeveloped relationship with the concept of their own rights. The bike was his in the sense that he had possession of it. And some people, when possession is interrupted, reach for authority reflexively, the way you reach for something to grab when you're falling. He had grabbed for the police. That was his second mistake. His first was cutting my lock. His second was calling 911 about a bike he'd stolen from me. On the kitchen table, the original purchase receipt, itemized, totaling $3,040, with the serial number printed at the top. A printout of the serial number from my bike's registration with the manufacturer. The police report I had filed Saturday morning, with the case number and the officer's name. And my laptop, open to the Ring camera footage, queued to 2:17 a.m. Friday night, showing a figure in dark clothing climbing over my balcony railing with bolt cutters. The first officer picked up the receipt. He looked at it. He looked at the serial number. He set it down and picked up the police report, his own precinct's report, with the case number that linked back to his own department's records. He was quiet for a moment. "The serial number on the receipt," I said, "matches the serial number on the bike in my living room. I can show you if you want to check." He looked at the bike leaning against my wall. He looked at the receipt. "The camera footage," I said, and I turned the laptop toward him, "shows the bike being taken from my balcony on Friday at 2:17 a.m. You can see the bolt cutters." The younger officer leaned in to look at the screen. The first officer set the receipt down very carefully. He had the expression of a man assembling something in his head, not slowly, but with the deliberateness of someone who wants to get the sequence exactly right before he speaks. "The person who called this in," he said finally, "was selling your bike." "That's my understanding," I said. "And you took it back." "I reclaimed my property," I said. "I have the receipt. I have the serial number. I have footage of it being stolen. I filed a report with your department on Saturday morning." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at his partner. Something passed between them, not quite a smile, but the controlled not smile of two professionals in the presence of something that would be funny if they were off duty. "We're going to need copies of all of this," the first officer said. "Already printed," I said, and I handed him the second folder I had prepared, which contained copies of everything on the table. I had made 3 sets. I am thorough. He took the folder. He looked at it. He tucked it under his arm. "Mr. Chase," he said, "I want to be clear that reclaiming property this way involves some legal complexity that I'd recommend you discuss with an attorney. But based on what you've shown me," he stopped. "Started again. We're going to go back to that parking lot." "He might still be there," I said. He seemed pretty upset. The younger officer made a sound that was almost certainly a suppressed laugh converted at the last second into a cough. "We'll be in touch," the first officer said. They left. I watched their cruiser pull out of the lot from my window. I made another cup of tea. I sat on my couch and I looked at my bike against the wall and I waited. My phone rang 2 hours later. "First officer, we located the individual," he said. "He was still in the area. We ran the serial number at the scene, it matched your receipt and your report." A pause. "He's been charged with possession of stolen property. There's also a charge being assessed for filing a false police report." "He really called 911, I said. "He did," the officer said. There was something in his voice, very controlled, very professional. "Mr. Chase, I want to reiterate that the method you used today is not something we recommend. But I also want to say that your documentation was." Another pause, in which I felt him choosing his words with care. "Thorough. It made our job considerably easier." "I appreciate that," I said. "Have a good afternoon," he said. I put the phone down. I looked at the bike. I thought about Friday night, the cut lock on the balcony floor, the empty space under the weatherproof cover, the specific sick drop of realizing something you built was gone. Then I went and got my helmet from the hook by the door, because it was a Monday afternoon and I hadn't ridden yet, and the bike path behind the commercial strip was exactly 11 minutes away. I rode for 2 hours. The motor assist was smooth and seamless, the tires held the path perfectly, the October air was cold enough to be bracing and not cold enough to be unpleasant. I passed the grocery store parking lot on the way back. The sedan was gone. There was nothing to mark what had happened there except the ordinary asphalt of a Monday morning. I rode home. I brought the bike inside. I moved the cable from the balcony railing to a proper wall mount I installed in the living room that evening, because I am a person who updates his security practices based on new information. My phone had 17 notifications, Marcus, mostly, wanting updates, plus a few friends I told about the plan. I sent a group message, "Bike's home." He called the cops on me. They arrested him. Marcus responded with a single word, "Beautiful." It was, I think, the right word. So here is what I want to ask you, because I've been thinking about it since the officer's car pulled out of my lot. Is there anyone who thinks I went too far? Is there anyone reading this who believes the right move was to wait for a system that, by its own honest admission, rarely recovers stolen bikes, to hope that a case number in a database would bring back a $3,000 custom build that I had spent 18 months putting together? Or did a man who cut my lock at 2 in the morning, sold my bike for $800, and then called 911 when I took it back, did he build his own ending from the very first night he climbed over my railing? Because I just got back from a 2-hour ride, and the bike is home.
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.